In this video, you will learn beats, bars, and more. I wanted to make a video for my FL Studio people. If you don't use FL Studio or you're a musician, this is translatable. However, most videos on beats, bars, time signatures, all that good stuff is taught using notation. And while it makes sense to teach it using sheet music and showing notation, it could be hard to correlate that with our workspace here. So let's get started. Please smash that like button and subscribe. So the first thing we'll look at is our channel rack here. In our step sequencer, we've got different colors at different points. And if we open up our piano roll, we'll have lines at those same exact points. And these are beats. Right now, it sounds like this. It's a consistent, even spacing that is keeping time. The same as a metronome. And this metronome or this timing is exactly what our music's going to stick to, even if we remove one of these. If we give a listen, even though we removed this space here, there's still a beat there, and we can feel that. Ba, rest, da, da, rest, rest. Right? This is still something that we can bob our head with. And this helps because we can count this as 1, 2, 3, and 4, helping us communicate with other artists and musicians we're working with. If you've ever heard somebody say, put it on the 1, that's what they're talking about. If somebody says they don't like what's happening on the third beat, instead of wondering where the third beat is and what is happening there, now you know. Now, if we go to the playlist here, we also have lines for beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. But we also have numbers at the top here with their own darker lines that are more defined running through. And these are bars, also known to many musicians as measures. And if you'll notice, we have 4 of them before we have a color change. And this doesn't actually have as much to do with our timing as much as it does with helping us with our phrasing or our song structure. And we'll get more to that later. Generally, every new bar is going to have emphasis on the 1. So if we add an empty pattern here, get rid of this one, and just listen to the metronome, you'll hear emphasis at the beginning of every bar. And the reason for this is because this has to do with the way we as humans feel music. And now that we know these basics, the cool stuff happens. We can feel music in a lot of different ways. And the way that we're going to do this is by using different time signatures, which is a fancy way of saying how many beats per bar and what is considered a beat. So it takes us 4 beats per bar at this moment. We've laid it out with our pattern 1. This, in a time signature, is going to be the top number of the time signature. You see, the time signature tells us 2 things. The top number tells us how many of those beats in a bar, and the bottom number tells us what those beats are. So if we look here, each of these beats is going to be a quarter note with the way that it's set up. And therefore, because we have 4 beats in a bar and it's a quarter note, we're using a 4/4 time signature. If it's an eighth note, we would be using a 4/8 time signature, so on and so forth. This is something we can actually change in FL Studio by going Option, Project General Settings, and changing our time signature, numerator, and denominator. Numerator will be the top note, denominator will be the bottom. So let's start by changing the top number. Since we're changing the top number, we'll change this to a 3/4. we will now see a difference in the playlist. If we looked here, we never moved these pattern clips. This is still 1, 2, 3, 4 beats that we had until the next pattern clip plays. But you'll notice our pattern clips are only 3 beats. This is because they've changed to support the new time signature we've chosen. We move this to make it more correct, and we listen to our metronome. We'll hear it emphasize after every 3 beats. So now we're counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Versus before we were counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can hear the contrast in these, which we can take farther by going verse maybe a 5, 4. Perfect. How many beats per bar? 5, 4, 5 beats, 3, 4, 3 beats, 4, 4, 4 beats. So what about now if we change the bottom number? We will go to a 4, 8. If you'll notice in the playlist, nothing really has changed. But if we go to our channel rack, we have a big difference. If we go to our first pattern, we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 between all of our notes we had put before. Our note placements haven't changed. But what has changed is these colors in our channel rack. Now, with the fact that these got closer, you would think this was faster. That, however, is simply not the case. It is the exact same speed that we had before. This is due to our BPM, or beats per minute. Our tempo, or our BPM, tells us how many beats per minute we're going to have. At this point, we have 140 beats per minute. That means no matter if our beats are an eighth note, a quarter note, 16th note, doesn't matter, because we're going to have the same amount of those beats per minute. The only thing that changing that bottom number is going to do is give us a reference for what notes we're playing. So you see, rather than dictating the speed of a song, our time signature is literally all about the way that we feel or count a song. By changing our top or bottom number of the time signature, we're setting a different foundation in which we're going to build and feel rhythms, which can change the outcome of a song entirely. Our 4/4 and our 4/8 at the same BPM are going to sound exactly the same. The only way you would know there was even a difference is by the way it's written. If you were just listening, you would have to know the time signature to know the difference. They might feel different with somebody writing in a 4/8 besides a 4/4. However, to translate that feeling into knowing there's a different time signature is not very realistic. You would need the reference to know. So if we wanted to double the speed of our song, we wouldn't do that by changing the bottom number of our time signature. We would do that by doubling our beats per minute. If we moved this up, now we've doubled the time of that sound. If we went to an 8/8, however, what's the difference between an 8/8 playing eighth notes at 280 BPM versus a 4/4 playing eighth notes at 140 BPM? And the answer is absolutely nothing besides our point of reference. And this is the interesting thing about BPMs and time signatures. You see, even though these notes are playing at the same speed as the ones I set at 280 BPM, why is this not a 280 BPM song then? And that's because we say it's not. If I come back in here and I just play the quarter notes now, because we're in a 4/4, we're not in a 4/8. I just play the quarter notes each beat. This is normal time. But if I wanted to double time, I'd get that same imitation of 240 BPM, 280 BPM. And this is the idea of double time and half time. Half of 140 is 70 beats per minute. I could imitate a 70 beat per minute feeling by taking away one of each of those. Now if I play it, I'm at halftime. My actual beats are 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But we're going half that, halftime. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our whole time right there. And double time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Double time. So if you hear someone say halftime or double time, this is what those things mean. But we only know what halftime or double time is by taking our point of reference, which is the 140 BPM, because we say it is. If we forget that our metronome is our metronome and we forget that our BPM is our BPM at the top, we have no point of reference. And so really, when choosing a BPM, we could choose 70, we could choose 280. Either of them would match up with the hats that I just laid out. Now, with the full context of an actual song, it's a lot easier to be able to choose the BPM that was intended. But even then, if we did half or double the BPM, technically, it would still be in time with our project. It's just their counts at their point of reference wouldn't necessarily line up with ours that we would have within our project. So next time you've got a bunch of kicks and things laid out in here, if you end up dragging in a melody or a sample, go ahead and drag in a melody or sample that's at halftime and see the kind of feeling you can get. It can be very interesting to mix these things together. So next thing we'll talk about, which I told you we'd get back to, is phrases. If you'll notice, we've got our different colors here. Now, phrases, quite simply, is saying something. It's a phrase. It can either be open-ended or be a question, or it could be a period and be a statement. There's different names for these, but we won't get into that. What we will get into is that humans like patterns and they like the completion of a pattern. We like our suspense and resolution. These patterns and the suspense and resolution most often leads to 4 or 8 bar loops in modern music. So why do we have these different colored lines in our playlist? Well, if we count here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 bars. So these colors make it easy for us to differentiate between 4 and 8 bars, or 16 bars. Instead of having to count all these lines, we could instead just see, I've got these 2 colors, I've got 8 bars. So that's about it. A time signature is our reference for how many beats we have per bar, as well as at what count those are. So a 4/4 would be 4 beats at a quarter note per bar. 4/8 would be 4 beats at an eighth note per bar. 5/4 would be 5 beats at a quarter note per bar, so on and so forth. Our BPM is how many of those beats, whether quarter note or eighth note, we have per minute. And if we look in our playlist, the different colors we have on the back of our playlist is to help us keep track of our song structure, like our hooks and other potential phrases. If you like this video, please like this video. If you have any comments, please comment. I always appreciate a subscribe. It's Warren with Scale Audio, and adios.